Hi, this is going to be a fun one. It's one of my favorite topics. If you ever wondered why one medical opinion helps a veteran win a claim while another one gets pushed aside, the key word is probative. A lot of veterans hear that word and immediately think it sounds overly legal or overly technical, but it's actually a very practical concept. And if you understand it, you'll understand a little bit more of why some medical evidence moves a claim forward and other evidence does not. So we're going to go into that a little bit more detailed here today. In simple terms, a probative medical opinion is one that has real value because it actually helps answer the key questions the VA is trying to decide when it comes to your claim. And most of the time, that question is one of two things. So there's usually a few other outliers, but I think the most of them ask this question. First, is the connection related to military service? Or the second thing that we see most often is how severe is the condition and how much does it affect functioning? That functional impairment is important. You'll hear me talk about it a lot in various videos. That's where probative value comes in. A strong medical opinion does more than just say, yes, I think it's related, or no, I don't think so. I'm Dr. So-and-so, and here's my signature, and here's my medical opinion. This is connected to that. A strong opinion explains why, explains the why behind that conclusion. Why does that matter? Why? The VA guidance makes it clear that disability claims generally turn on evidence showing three things. So the three key things: a current disability, something that happened in service, and a link, that nexus, the link between the two. Those are the basic criteria for VA disability. So when we're talking about a medical opinion being probative, what we mean, it actually helps establish one of those elements. It's a medical reason that explains that. So let's break that down a little bit more. A medical opinion is stronger when it includes a clear diagnosis or symptoms of chronic pain. Saunders versus Wilkie, depends on which way you're going with that. It matters because the opinion has to be grounded in actual medical condition or chronic pain, not just symptoms floating around without a diagnosis. Showing up and saying, yeah, I've had this chronic pain for 10 years and no documentation is not really going to cut it in most cases. It's also stronger when the provider has reviewed the relevant records. It can include treatment records, private records, imaging tests, specialist notes, sleep study, mental health records, personal statements, buddy letters, prior exam findings, decision letters. It can be anything, but reviewing the full record is important. The reason it's simple. A doctor cannot give the most reliable opinion if they don't know the full medical story. They can't give a really good reasoned result if they only have 3 pages of what has ever been documented for it. Another major part is something called a rationale. The rationale just means that explanation behind the opinion. It is the most important pieces of your support document. And it's one of the most important words for the veterans to understand about medical evidence. A conclusion without a rationale is weak. I said so because I'm Dr. So-and-so. Who cares, right? A conclusion with detailed rationale is much, much stronger. So let's say if a provider writes, it's at least as likely as not that the veteran's migraines are related to service. A very basic sentence. That sounds helpful on the surface, but by itself, it may not carry much weight. If that provider never explains why, it falls flat. A stronger version would say something like this, for example. The veteran had documented headache complaints during or after service. The current migraine pattern is medically consistent with that history. Other likely causes were considered, and the available medical records and the available medical literature supports the plausibility of that connection. That is a more probative opinion because it actually helps the decision maker, that rating official, understand the medical logic behind the opinion. Another important piece that we need to talk about and consider is whether the opinion addresses conflicting evidence. If there are risk factors, gaps in care, other possible explanations for your condition, a strong opinion does not ignore them. Don't cherry pick. It talks about them. We talk about them. These are all the risk factors, and these are service connected and these aren't. And this is why these service connected pieces are more important in this veteran's case. This is important because many veterans worry that if they have other risk factors, their claim automatically is weak, and they often try to ask for those to be excluded. Don't do that. The full truth is always better. A risk factor is not the same thing as a rule out factor. So, for example, if a veteran has hypertension and has a PTSD and obesity and a family history or other age-related risk factors, the question is not whether those other risk factors exist. The question is whether the medical evidence still supports a service-related or secondary connection, despite having those other factors. That's the way you do it. That's how you make it strong. That's how no one comes back and say there's a duty to assist error, that things were left out or omitted or missing. That's not where you have one opinion from the VA saying we have other things to consider that you didn't. It's where medical judgment matters. A strong opinion can acknowledge that other contributors, and they still can explain why a service-connected condition is at least as likely or not part of that aggravation picture. If you're hiding from all the facts, it's not right. And it's going to come out, and there are going to be pieces that are going to make that opinion less probative. Now let's talk about one more word that matters, aggravation. You hear me talking about this a lot. Aggravation means a condition may not have been caused by a service, but it was worsened beyond its normal progression by a service-connected condition. The VA will recognize worsening as part of service connection analysis. It matters because some opinions are weak simply because they only discuss causation. We see a lot of denial letters that talk about causation and ignore aggravation, and write many rebuttal letters to say you forgot to consider aggravation. You go get a higher level review or supplemental claim, and you get that reconsidered. So if a veteran's sleep problems, blood pressure, pain, mental health symptoms, they got worse because of another service-connected condition, a good opinion should address that possibility. Here's the bottom line. When you're thinking about this medical opinion, it's probative when it's based on medical records grounded in a diagnosis that is medically explained, that is responsive to the real question, and that it's honest about all the competent facts of the case. You take the entire clinical picture. That's the kind of evidence that actually helps veterans. Nothing fast, no cutting corners, no cherry picking. It's not a one-size-fits-all, may not apply to you. If you're looking at your own records and you're not sure whether the evidence simply states conclusions or truly explains the connections, that's often the difference between weak documentation and useful documentation. A very thorough medical evidence review can help identify these pieces. And that's exactly why the quality of that medical reasoning matters so much. The company that you choose shouldn't be fast, cheap. I give 15 pages, 2 versus 2 pages. Quantity doesn't matter. It's the quality of the document you get. If you're not sure whether your current records or medical opinions are actually probative, make sure you get a really competent person to do that medical evidence review, and they can help identify in your case what that evidence shows, what the denial letter shows, what's strong, what's missing, what may need to be clarified. This is not about making anything up. This is what exists and making sure it's documented properly.